It says I'm going live. It says I'm live. Boy, I'm dark. Can you see me at all? It's hard, huh? Let's see. I know it's because the windows have sunshine. The weather has been crazy. It's been sunshine and gray and drizzle and sunshine and hot and gray and sunshine. So lots going on, but maybe you can see me there. Maybe that's not too much sunshine. I don't know. I can't tell. I think that's okay. Welcome to Frankenstein Tea. Welcome back to Frankenstein Tea. I was visiting with my family and recorded a few episodes and then missed a few, but here I am live on Sunday, September 27th, 2020, from my home. And Frankenstein Tea is a short story program for adult listeners. It is Frankenstein makes a reference to the monster of a time we're living through and the monster of an illness. And the tea is about coming together and sitting down and dealing with that together. So at this program with the Island Free Library, we do that through literature and through short story. And today I am going to read you Nadine Gordemur. This is from a book of hers called Crimes of Conscience. Conscience? Hard word for me. Conscious. Selected short stories. I've read from this book before. I like this little book. It's little. It came out of the book sale. It's a nice. I always think it's very old. It seems a little old, but some of the stories are older. That's why. Yeah. So the story I'm going to read today. It's 1980, maybe 1989. This edition of all these stories collected like this is 1991. So, you know, sort of old, but not as old as I feel like this book is. And, you know, this cover is, and this, you know, everything about it seems older than 1991 to me, but that's the way it is. So today I'm going to read Nadine Gordemur's Country Lovers. The farm children play together when they are small, but once the white children go away to school, they soon don't play together anymore, even in the holidays. Although most of the black children get some sort of schooling, they drop every year further behind the grades passed by the white children. The childish vocabulary, the child's exploration of the adventurous possibilities of dam, copies, mealy lands, and veld. There comes a time when the white children have surpassed these with the vocabulary of boarding school and the possibilities of inter-school sports matches and the kind of adventures seen at the cinema. This usefully coincides with the age of 12 or 13, so that by the time early adolescence is reached, the black children are making, along with the bodily changes common to all, an easy transition to adult forms of address, beginning to call their old playmates Mrs. and Bassie, Little Master. The trouble was Paulus Eisendick did not seem to realize that to Betty was now simply one of the crowd of farm children down at the kraal, recognizable in his sister's old clothes. The first Christmas holidays after he'd gone to boarding school, he brought home for Betty a painted box he had made in his woodwork class. He had to give it to her secretly because he had nothing for the other children at the kraal. And she gave him, before he went back to school, a bracelet she had made of thin brass wire and the gray and white beans of the castor oil crop his father cultivated. When they used to play together, she was the one who taught Paulus how to make clay oxen for their toy spans. There was a craze, even in the Platland towns, like the one where he was at school, for boys to wear elephant hair and other bracelets beside their watch straps. His was admired. Friends asked him to get similar ones for them. He said the natives made them on his father's farm, and he would try. When he was 15, 6 feet tall and tramping round at school dances with girls from the sister school in the same town, when he had learnt how to tease and flirt and fondle quite intimately these girls who were the daughters of prosperous farmers like his father, when he had even met one who, at a wedding he had attended with his parents on a nearby farm, had let him do with her in a locked storeroom what people did when they made love. When he was as far from his childhood as all this, he still brought home from a shop in town a red plastic belt and gilt hoop earrings for the black girl, Tebeti. She told her father the missus had given these to her as a reward for some work she had done. It was true, she sometimes was called to help out in the farmhouse. She told the girls in the kraal that she had a sweetheart nobody knew about, far away on another farm, and they giggled and teased and admired her. There was a boy in the kraal called Jabulo, who said he wished he could have bought her a belt and earrings. When the farmer's son was home for the holidays, she wandered far from the kraal and her companions. He went for walks alone. They had not arranged this. It was an urge each followed independently. He knew it was she from a long way off. She knew that his dog would not bark at her. Down at the dried up riverbed where 5 or 6 years ago the children had caught a lagoon one great day, a creature that combined ideally the size and ferocious aspect of the crocodile with the harmlessness of the lizard. They squatted side by side on the earth bank. He told her traveler's tales about school, about the punishments at school, particularly exaggerating both their nature and his indifference to them. He told her about the town of Middleburg, which she had never seen. She had nothing to tell, but she prompted with many questions, like any good listener. While he talked, he twisted and tugged at the roots of white stinkwood and cape willow trees that looped out of the eroded earth around them. It had always been a good spot for children's games, down there hidden by the mesh of old ant-eaten trees held in place by vigorous ones, wild asparagus bushing up between the trunks, and here and there prickly pear cactus, sunken, skinned, and bristly, like an old man's face, keeping alive sapless until the next rainy season. She punctured the dry hide of a prickly pear again and again with a sharp stick while she listened. She laughed a lot at what he told her, sometimes dropping her face on her knees, sharing amusement with the cool, shady earth beneath her bare feet. She put on her pair of shoes, white sandals, thickly blanco-ed against the farm dust, when he was on the farm, but these were taken off and laid aside at the riverbed. One summer afternoon, when there was water flowing there and it was very hot, she waded in as they used to when they were children, her dress bunched modestly and tucked into the legs of her pants. The schoolgirls he went swimming with at dams or pools on neighboring farms wore bikinis, but the sight of their dazzling bellies and thighs and the sunlight had never made him feel what he felt now. When the girl came up the bank and sat beside him, the drops of water beating off her dark legs, the only points of light in the earth-smelling deep shade. They were not afraid of one another. They had known one another always. He did with her what he had done that time in the storeroom at the wedding, and this time it was so lovely, he was surprised. And she was surprised by it too. He could see in her dark face that was part of the shade, with her big dark eyes, shiny as soft water, watching him attentively, as she had when they used to huddle over their teams of mud oxen, as she had when he told her about detention weekends at school. They went to the riverbed often through those summer holidays. They met just before the light went, as it does quite quickly, and each returned home with the dark. She to her mother's hut, he to the farmhouse, in time for the evening meal. He did not tell her about school or town anymore. She did not ask questions any longer. He told her each time when they would meet again. Once or twice, it was very early in the morning. The lowing of the cows being driven to graze came to them where they lay, dividing them with unspoken recognition of the sound read in their two pairs of eyes, opening so close to each other. He was a popular boy at school. He was in the second, then the first soccer team. The head girl of the sister school was said to have a crush on him. He didn't particularly like her, but there was a pretty blonde who put up her long hair into a kind of donut with a black ribbon round it, whom he took to see films when the schoolboys and girls had a free Saturday afternoon. He had been driving tractors and other farm vehicles since he was 10 years old, and as soon as he was 18, he got a driver's license, and in the holidays, this last year of his school life, he took neighbors' daughters to dances and to the drive-in cinema that had just opened 20 kilometers from the farm. His sisters were married by then. His parents often left him in charge of the farm over the weekend while they visited the young wives and grandchildren. When Tabeti saw the farmer and his wife drive away on a Saturday afternoon, the boot of their Mercedes filled with fresh-killed poultry and vegetables from the garden, that it was part of her father's work to tend, she knew that she must not come to the riverbed, but up to the house. The house was an old one, thick-walled, dark against the heat. The kitchen was its lively thoroughfare, with servants, food supplies, begging cats and dogs, pots boiling over, washing being damped for ironing, and the big deep freeze the missus had ordered from town, bearing a crocheted mat and a vase of plastic irises. But the dining room with the bulging, legged, heavy table was shut up in its rich old smell of soup and tomato sauce. The sitting room curtains were drawn and the TV set silent. The door of the parents' bedroom was locked, and the empty rooms where the girls had slept had sheets of plastic spread over the beds. It was in one of these that she and the farmer's son stayed together whole nights. Almost. She had to get away before the house servants, who knew her, came in at dawn. There was a risk someone would discover her or traces of her presence if he took her to his own bedroom, although she had looked into it many times when she was helping out in the house and knew well there the row of silver cups he had won at school. When she was 18 and the farmer's son 19 and working with his father on the farm before entering a veterinary college, the young man, Jabulo, asked her father for her. Jabulo's parents met with hers, and the money he was to pay in place of the cows it is a customary to give a prospective bride's parents was settled upon. He had no cows to offer. He was a laborer on the Eisendijk farm, like her father. A bright youngster, old Eisendijk had taught him bricklaying and was using him for odd jobs in construction around the place. She did not tell the farmer's son that her parents had arranged for her to marry. She did not tell him either, before he left for his first term at the veterinary college, that she thought she was going to have a baby. 2 months after her marriage to Jabulo, she gave birth to a daughter. There was no disgrace in that. Among her people, it is customary for a young man to make sure before marriage that the chosen girl is not barren, and Jabulo had made love to her then. But the infant was very light and did not quickly grow darker as most African babies do. Already at birth, there was on its head a quantity of straight, fine floss, like that which carries the seeds of certain weeds in the veld. The unfocused eyes it opened were gray, flecked with yellow. Jubulo was the matte, opaque, coffee grounds color that has always been called black. The color of Tibeti's legs on which she beaded water looked oyster shell blue, the same color as Tibeti's face, where the black eyes, with their interested gaze and clear whites, were so dominant. Njubulo made no complaint. Out of his farm laborer's earnings, he bought from the Indian store a cellophane window-packed can containing a pink plastic bath, 6 napkins, a card of safety pins, a knitted jacket, cap and booties, a dress, and a tin of Johnson's baby powder for Tibeti's baby. When it was 2 weeks old, Paulus Eisendijk arrived home from the veterinary college for the holidays. He drank a glass of fresh, still warm milk in the childhood familiarity of his mother's kitchen and heard her discussing with the old house servant where they could get a reliable substitute to help out now that the girl, Tibeti, had had a baby. For the first time since he was a small boy, he came right into the crawl. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. The men were at work in the lands. He looked about him urgently. The women turned away, each not wanting to be the one approached to point out where Tibeti lived. Tibeti appeared, coming slowly from the hut Njubulo had built in white man style, with a tin chimney and a proper window with glass panes set in straight as walls made of unfired brick would allow. She greeted him with hands brought together and a token movement representing the respectful bob with which she was accustomed to acknowledge she was in the presence of his father or mother. He lowered his head under the doorway of her home and went in. He said, "I want to see. Show me." She had taken the bundle off her back before she came out into the light to face him. She moved between the iron bedstead made up with Njubulo's checked blankets and the small wooden table where the pink plastic bath stood among food and kitchen pots, and picked up the bundle from the snugly blanketed grocer's box where it lay. The infant was asleep. She revealed the closed, pale, plump, tiny face, with a bubble of spit at the corner of the mouth, the spidery pink hands stirring. She took off the woolen cap and the straight, fine hair flew up after it in static electricity, showing gilded strands here and there. He said nothing. She was watching him as she had done when they were little, and the gang of children had trodden down a crop in their games or transgressed in some other way for which he, as the farmer's son, the white one among them, must intercede with the farmer. She disturbed the sleeping face by scratching or tickling gently at a cheek with one finger, and slowly the eyes opened, saw nothing, were still asleep, and then, awake, no longer narrowed, looked out at them, gray with yellowish flecks, his own hazel eyes. He struggled for a moment with a grimace of tears, anger, and self-pity. She could not put out her hand to him. He said, "You haven't been near the house with it?" She shook her head. "Never?" Again, she shook her head. "Don't take it out. Stay inside. Can't you take it away somewhere? You must give it to someone." She moved to the door with him. He said, I'll see what I will do. I don't know." And then he said, "I feel like killing myself." Her eyes began to glow, to thicken with tears. For a moment, there was the feeling between them that used to come when they were alone down at the riverbed. He walked out. 2 days later, when his mother and father had left the farm for the day, he appeared again. The women were away on the lands weeding, as they were employed to do as casual labor in summer. Only the very old remained, propped up on the ground outside the huts in the flies and the sun. Tibeti did not ask him in. The child had not been well. It had diarrhea. He asked her where its food was. She said, "The milk comes from me." He went into Najubul's house where the child lay. She did not follow, but stayed outside the door and watched without seeing an old crone who had lost her mind, talking to herself, talking to the fowls who ignored her. She thought she heard small grunts from the hut, the kind of infant grunt that indicates a full stomach, a deep sleep. After a time, long or short, she did not know, he came out and walked away with a plodding stride, his father's gait, out of sight towards his father's house. The baby was not fed during the night, and although she kept telling Najubulo it was sleeping, he saw for himself in the morning that it was dead. He comforted her with words and caresses. She did not cry, but simply sat, staring at the door. Her hands were cold as dead chicken's feet to his touch. Najubulo buried the little baby where farm workers were buried, in the place in the veld the farmer had given them. Some of the mounds had been left to weather away unmarked. Others were covered with stones, and a few had fallen wooden crosses. He was going to make a cross, but before it was finished, the police came and dug up the grave and took away the dead baby. Someone, one of the other laborers, their women, had reported that the baby was almost white, that strong and healthy, it had died suddenly after a visit by the farmer's son. Pathological tests on the infant corpse showed intestinal damage not always consistent with death by natural causes. Tibeti went for the first time to the country town where Paulus had been to school to give evidence at the preparatory examination into the charge of murder brought against him. She cried hysterically in the witness box, saying, "Yes, yes." The gilt hoop earrings swung in her ears. She saw the accused pouring liquid into the baby's mouth. She said he had threatened to shoot her if she told anyone. More than a year went by before, in that same town, the case was brought to trial. She came to court with a newborn baby on her back. She wore gilt hoop earrings. She was calm. She said she had not seen what the white man did in the house. Paulus Eisendijk said he had visited the hut but had not poisoned the child. The defense did not contest that there had been a love relationship between the accused and the girl, or that intercourse had taken place, but submitted there was no proof that the child was the accused. The judge told the accused there was strong suspicion against him, but not enough proof that he had committed the crime. The court could not accept the girl's evidence because it was clear she had committed perjury either at this trial or at the preparatory examination. There was a suggestion in the mind of the court that she might be an accomplice in the crime, but again, insufficient proof. The judge commended the honorable behavior of the husband, sitting in court in a brown and yellow quartered golf cap bought for Sundays, who had not rejected his wife and had even provided clothes for the unfortunate infant out of his slender means. The verdict on the accused was not guilty. The young white man refused to accept the congratulations of press and public and left the court with his mother's raincoat shielding his face from photographers. His father said to the press, "I will try and carry on as best I can to hold up my head in the district." Interviewed by the Sunday papers, who spelled her name in a variety of ways, the Black girl, speaking in her own language, was quoted beneath her photograph. "It was a thing of our childhood. We don't see each other anymore." It was Nadine Gordemur. That short story was called Country Lovers, from a book of selected short stories, Crimes of Conscience. They're all set in Southern Africa. This particular collection is produced by the African Writers Series. Okay, that's Frankenstein Tea for today. Thanks for coming. I'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Currently, it is sunny. Enjoy it. Have a great afternoon, Block Island and beyond. Peace.